Welcome to the program. If I could start by asking you, what's your reaction to the crisis in Zimbabwe? What are your observations?
Well, quite notable that today the South African government sent a delegation and they have confirmed that they are engaging with the military, which is something that civil society and many analysts have always argued was the missing element in the SADC mediation in 2008, 2009, because we know too well that what is happening in Zimbabwe, the telling signs have always been there. You could trace from the colonial period the prominence of the military, even in the negotiations from colonialism to a new independent Zimbabwe through the 1980s, reinforced by the prominence of the military again, even in the liberation movements. And this was never addressed upon independence in 1980. In fact, one could argue that what we have had in Zimbabwe has been a military regime with a civilian face. And what you are seeing now happening is that Grace Mugabe, because of her unabated ambition and also the desperation to secure herself in a post-Mugabe situation, given the inevitability of his end because of his deteriorating health, was desperate to ensure that she is in control through capturing state power. But of course, the military has been quite a central feature historically, and in the 2000s, with Mugabe losing popular legitimacy, the military has even been more central. We know that the Joint Operations Commands, for example, itself a legacy of the colonial history, was quite pivotal and had become the ultimate guarantor of Mugabe's continued stay in power. But unfortunately, what the mistake that Grace Mugabe and Mugabe did was to attack their very source of power. And we have seen what has happened now, which is an attempt by the military regime to reconstitute itself, but also change its civilian face going forward, most probably. So the question is, will this then mean the end in dictatorship in Zimbabwe? The answer is no. Will it improve the economic prospects of the country? Perhaps, because clearly you are seeing, an admission on the part of the military and the key players who are supporting the military that the economic trajectory is not sustainable. But so isn't
that just rhetoric though? Isn't that just rhetoric though? Because the very same people that they're backing, supposedly, in this civilian government have been there all along with the same ZANU-PF. So that they have to say something when they come on air and make statements and say the right things. But is it really going to be different economically?
I think you're right to some extent. I mean, the rhetoric around normalizing the economy is part of a way of legitimizing the takeover that has happened. So you have to say something that is popular appeal. But at the same time, there is the reality that the economic situation is not sustainable. It had become unsustainable even for the Mugabe's regime post-2000. Clearly, with what happened in 2008, with soldiers almost going into the street because of the acute shortages. So, whilst yes, there is an element of self-serving rhetoric, but the reality is that the economic situation in Zimbabwe cannot continue as is, because it will result in some social implosion. So anyone who hopes to take over power in Zimbabwe and to make that project sustainable would have to address the economic question, whether they like it or not.
All right.
And of course, that speaks also to the role of the region.
We've run out of time, unfortunately. We would have loved to have spoken a little bit more about SADC's role, but as you said earlier, the President of South Africa has moved quickly as SADC chair to try and intervene on SADC's behalf in the situation in Zimbabwe.